All right, baby, back with episode 65. Is it 66? We're at 66 now. We will catch y'all at the end of the intro. Yeah, I lose track
Right.
of these times every time, or not times, episodes. I don't know why. It's one episode after another, but going from 65 to 66 or 64 to 65 messes with me every single time. But anyways, we got Francis here today. Met him in an online group, IO. Some of y'all may know because I've had a couple people on now from there, and people I meet in there are pretty phenomenal. This man is on that list. A lot of people in there go through something tough, and on the backside, IO, irrational optimist, somehow end up being optimistic. So that's what we got here with Francis. Excited to get into it. He sent me my start or his story, and I believe, if you don't mind, Francis, I think I'm gonna throw that on our website as a blog.
Yeah, for sure that
Because
works.
yeah, because it is longer, but man, is it a good read. And I sent you back, yeah, your writing style. I'm a huge fan of your writing style. It mimics mine a bit, and
I
I don't
appreciate that.
yeah, it's awesome. Nice to see. You could tell everyone always tells me it's how you talk. Like, Trevor, I could hear you saying this when you're like when reading you writing. So that's good. I guess that's what the goal of writing is. I'm new to it, but there's nothing better than writing.
Yeah.
How you feeling today though, man? Feeling good?
Yeah. Optimistic. Well, yeah, optimistic, but also just feeling inspired and kind of dialing in. Yeah, I don't know. This is kind of serendipitous. Just kind of dialing into my niche. For a long time, I was just kind of helping people with whatever kind of came up,
Mhm.
and not really kind of specific focus, but um, a big part of my life that's always been important is kind of helping people tap into like their deeper purpose, like their vocation, their soul's purpose, however you want to call it. And it's kind of, since it is kind of abstract, it's been hard to kind of like niche down on.
Mhm.
But I've been taking steps to kind of like brainstorm what that looks like, ideal client, like what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they're believing, and stuff. Um, so excited to kind of see this come together and
Yeah.
help people find their soul's purpose, right?
Yeah. No, that was our first episode because that's what I struggle with the most, man. Because I'm assuming, yeah, you went through something like it, and you had to dive deep up on that. And I was like, I'm gonna help people find like use what I went through and help them find what they need to do with their life. Because man, have we steered pretty far from that path in society.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so that brings up a really good point. That's kind of how it started. Wow. I mean, yeah. So I grew up. I grew up. Life was pretty good. My dad had cancer when I was young, which is, it happens. My mom would work like 16-hour days, 80-hour weeks to provide for us while he was in the hospital. I spent a lot of time like growing up on my own, but it was also really awesome. I learned a lot. I guess because since I didn't have like a parent swooping in and being like, "Oh no, no, you can't do that." No, no.
Mhm.
I spent a lot of time figuring stuff out, reading books that I found, messing with like his tools. So I got handy. I remember like I would like took apart like the lights and stuff. I would just take apart random things and put it back together. And then like when my mom would come home, she'd like freak out because I'm like doing this stuff. She's like, "No, you can't do that." And I'm like, in the back of my head, I'm like, "Yeah, I can." So I just wait till she left, like start tinkering again. Um, but when things changed was like, my dad passed away when I was 8, and we moved. And my brother, he was just, I don't know, he was, and that's what's kind of, I've come a long way. So at the time, he was a cocaine and alcohol addict. He was like 20 years older than me, and he had a different father who wasn't loving. And like before I was born, my dad was very loving towards him. So like when we moved in together, I was like 8. He hated me because I guess at some level he felt I was taking his spot,
Mm-hmm.
and he relished in abusing me. So that was like the beginning of like a very rough time in my life.
What age were you at?
I was 9 when we moved,
9. Okay.
and he was 28, so it was kind of it was a thing. It was pretty rough. Um, After a long, I mean, I guess I'm kind of diverting. It took a long time, but kind of like what you're saying, as far as straying from society, I can have compassion and empathy for him for what he went through. I can't agree with what he did. I can't condone what he did, but I can
Mm.
see why it's really important to like bring a more wholesome message, or just create the space where a person feels loved and accepted. I feel like if he had something like that, he wouldn't have been nearly the way he was, if that makes sense. Um,
No, it makes a lot of sense actually, and I'm divorced, so people ask like, how do you live with it still? Like when I first got divorced, she did me dirty. When I first got divorced, people would ask like, how are you not going beating that guy up? Or like my family would be very upset with her and I wouldn't. And they would ask me why, and it was because, like you just said, I could see how like empathy, I could see how her life went. Like I could see why she's kind of like this, and I just fell in the crossfires. Like I got nothing against you. You did me dirty, but that's a very interesting thing that you did it as well. You I don't know, is that just empathy to a T? Is just you understand someone's situation and you can see how they got there. Yeah, I got hurt. I don't agree with what you did, but I don't want ill passed upon you still, you know?
yeah, I mean, it took I think, and this is what's kind of cool. I'm in a so recently, like kind of things kind of went up in the air and kind of exploded, like my foundation, like a year ago. And I was reaching out to people that I knew, and I came across something called the Mankind Project. And they have I guess at the root, they often talk about doing like the deep work. And I would say this was kind of like the deep work of my life. Like it took a long time to get to where I am now, as far as my relationship. I mean, I don't have a relationship with him, but as far as relating to my brother in that way. And at first I relished. It was like me versus him. Like as I heard terrible things were happening to him and in his life, I would like relish in it.
Mhm.
um when things started to flip, it was when toxic masculinity became like popular, and people would just bash on people for being like, toxically masculine. And I was like,
Yeah.
so my point of reference was him. I was like, no, this is not even close. That is toxic masculinity. And then the more that like they would hound on it, I was like, fuck. Like that's when I started getting compassion for him. I was like, imagine if there's all these people that aren't anywhere close to like my brother's level, and they're taking this on and being pointed and blamed for being like a toxic masculine person, or like embodying that kind of energy. But imagine that you really had that energy and everyone's just like pointing at you and blaming you and coming around you and circling around you. Like, you have nothing else left but to lash out and to be that way. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
that's when I kind of started the switch started flipping. I was like, man, like that's, and he's probably doing this to himself like every day. You know what I mean? Just like thinking about
Yeah,
how much of a
pointing
piece
at
of shit he
himself.
is.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so like when you're looking around and you're just looking for anyone to like just accept you, like my dad did for him, like for being who he was, and you can't find it, like, you get defensive, like, well, fuck you, I don't need you anyway, kind of stuff. Like,
Mhm.
and that's kind of when it started flipping. And yeah, I mean, like, yeah, that's kind of where things are right now. Like, we don't have a relationship, we don't talk. It's still like shaky ground because like my mom's still around, so like that's kind of like our common point. But I gotta say, it took a lot to get here as far as seeing him in that way. But also, it's kind of a reflection of myself too, like projection's a bitch. We can't get away from it. So, and I think that kind of ties back to IO, like why it's so important to choose how you look at things and to see the best in people. I think I mentioned this on like in the group too. Like, um, I've heard many stories about this, and this was like an exercise that I worked with. Like, when I was being trained as a hypnotist, we had like active participants that were like from the neighborhood that like our
Mhm.
teacher kind of like rounded up, that wanted to experience hypnosis, and they were hanging out in like the foyer, and our job was just to connect with them, listen to them, and at some point like visualize them being resourceful, kind of like seeing the light inside of them, seeing that like spark kind of pop up, and see them solve their own problem. And they, they brought everyone in, they sat down, and we all paired up, and we were just listening. And at some point, like when we just made that shift, they would be talking about the problem, talking themselves into a hole, and then like randomly they'd be like, but maybe I could reach out to this person, and they're pretty good about this.
Okay.
And I think they would know something, but oh yeah, if I talk to Ben, and Ben knows that, he could probably point me in the right direction. And they would start talking themselves into the solution. It was just like wild, just by like
Hmm.
visualizing and seeing themselves as a resourceful person that can solve their own problems. They became it, if that makes sense. I think that
Yeah,
kind of
no.
ties into mind over matter too.
Yeah, it's a big way to do things in therapy as well. You listen to Jordan Peterson, that's what he does too. This is how therapy should work. I'm not giving you the solutions. I'm
Right.
here to lead you for you to say, yeah, maybe I am a little too angry in the morning. I'm not going to tell you you're too angry in the morning.
Right.
I'm
Right.
going to lead you like, hey, do you think this is good for you? No, I don't think this is good for me. All right. Is there any benefits coming from it? No, there's no benefits really. Right. So you're just angry in the morning? Yeah, I'm just angry in the morning. Oh my God, I'm just angry in the morning. Like you finally realize it. But hypnosis, dude, that's got a bad rap. Can you explain it all? Can you go through it
Oh,
real quick just so like because people that are listening to this, you see a hypnosis or what do you call what's the professor or like the person doing it?
oh,
Hypnotist?
well, yeah, you could say hypnotist, but usually, like, so technically, it's the operator and the subject.
Okay.
And I don't like that kind of language. Like, yeah, like when I was going through school for it, we would talk about the person we're working with as the subject, you know, because it's
Yeah,
like
that's
trying. To me, I think it's like an air of formality. They're trying to. I mean, it is very researched. It is very esteemed. It's just that I like operator and co-operator because, like you're saying,
Mm,
it's less about me doing something to you. Um, and I think that's a great point. Like, it does get a really bad rap. That's why I
yeah.
generally don't. I'll say that I'm a coach over a hypnotist or a hypnotherapist or whatever, just because it has that rap. Um, and it kind of comes down to the mainstream, like in movies and stuff. It's very sensationalized. You kind of think of like the swinging watch or like
Yep.
clucking like a chicken. That's like where everyone goes, or not everyone, but like 95% of people, or the
I think
hypnotic
watch immediately.
gaze. Yeah.
I think
And the interesting thing is, I was talking to like a colleague about this. It's not so much that hypnosis is a thing that exists or that you do, it's that we're trance-like beings. And it kind of goes into shamanism in the sense that like we're always in some kind of state, we're always in some kind of trance. Back in the 70s, like the alpha beta state, like alpha waves,
Mhm.
beta waves, gamma, all that was like all the rage. Theta and delta is like where you go, the state you want to be in for like manifestation. Alpha is like meditative. um, and so it's kind of cool that we have a lot of research and we've seen like how the brain works. But when it comes to hypnosis, I like to think of it more like sports, or like like, what's the purpose? What are you trying to achieve here? Like, if you think of a person like in NASCAR, they're in a trance, right? They are so focused, their attention is absorbed in the moment. They're completely connected with their unconscious. It's making those fine adjustments so they don't spin out, so they don't crash into another car. They're just like in it. And basically everything that can like absorb your attention is a gateway into a trance, which is hypnosis,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
And then kind of to go on a tangent, part of me feels that the reason hypnosis gets such a bad rap is twofold. Like, yeah, I'll be open about it. Like, you've got big pharma, right?
Haha.
Like, it, so to me, like, the root of our power as humans is the placebo effect. And it's sad that it's already downplayed by calling it the placebo effect. I think it's a lot more powerful than the term
Oh,
we've given
yeah.
to it, you
Yeah.
know? And it comes down to faith, right? So, like, if I'm a person that can tap into my internal power and channel my faith and get the the results I'm looking for in life, whether that be like taking care of an illness, an ailment, whatever it is. Uh, when it comes to a person that's pushing their drug or their, their product, their funnel, I'm not going to buy into it because I've got the solution already. So downplay how important faith is, downplay the placebo effect, position my product, right? And keep you
Right.
sick too. And that's the other thing, like, is if it was meant to like restore you, but it's meant to keep you in their cycle.
Right.
The other side of it is, so like they don't want us, I mean, like, take it or leave it. I believe they don't want us to have, they don't want us to make this credible. And it's becoming a lot more credible nowadays with like the internet and stuff, and like, 20 years of the internet, I guess I should say. The other side of it is hypnosis is persuasion, it's influence. um like when we study it, there's like so many different dynamics that lead into a person changing their mind. So part of it is like social psychology and influence. And when you look at politicians, like they're using hypnosis all the time, but they're not going to say that. And they're going to
Yeah.
downplay it and be like, no, hypnosis is stupid, I'm totally not using it on you, you know right? And it's interesting when you look at some of the research, like the Stanley Milgram experiments, but specifically like Solomon Ash, when it goes to consent. I mean, all right, well, we kind of just saw what happened with COVID, right? That was like mass hypnosis. In this, well, I guess what it is it's more of people taking advantage of how we're wired as humans. This kind of goes back to us being trans-like beings. Like some of the studies in Solomon Ash, they'd have like it was all actors and then one person that was being researched, and they'd pair that person up, and they'd have to measure like compare strings. Like every person was handed a piece of string, and they would kind of compare them and come to a consensus on which string is the longest. And so when there was just like the person being researched and the other actor, the actors always said it was the wrong answer. So when it was just like one on one, the person being researched was like, "This guy's an idiot. Like it's clearly this string." And half the time they would still go along with it just to spare the guy's feelings. Then they would introduce like two more people. So now we've got three people saying the shorter string is longer than the one that the person being researched has. And then they're like kind of thinking like, man, how could all these people get it wrong? Like then they start looking around, getting a little suspicious. And again, like half the time they just go with it because now they don't want to mess with the group. They don't want
Yep.
to like get, become an outcast. Then they would have like seven actors, and they would have like a really short piece of string, and then like the person being researched would have this very long piece, and it was clear, like clear state that like this is not longer than this. And then they would just like kind of like their mind would just get fucked. They're like, and then they would it was like only 25% of people went against the grain. 75% of people agreed with the consent, like the mass
Wow.
consensus. And I just think that's just a research program with string. Like imagine what happens on a wider scale like we saw, So um take it or leave it, it's a part of what it is to be human, and I think the best defense is understanding how it works so you can defend yourself against it. That's what I think got me through 2020 moving forward, is I could just see all the different mechanisms at place, like, oh, repetition, oh, tonality change, oh, all the different framing, all the things that led up to influencing that way. And I kind of like to look at it like an odds kind of game. Like I don't know if you play role playing games or anything, but
Yeah, some.
so like like you've got your like +1 bracelet that adds +1 to your roll. You got like some magic sword that get
Oh
+1.
yeah.
So like all the things you're stacking all these different things in your favor, and like alone they might not really be so influential, but when you've got like 20, 30, 40 different things all just like pushing someone that way, the odds of them going that way is a lot higher than if you just had one thing. So it's kind of interesting to see all the different mechanisms they tied in together to get the response they wanted. I don't know.
Man, no, that
I
was I never thought about it like that. So I'm a big RuneScape guy. I played RuneScape all growing up.
Oh sure.
Old school. And that, yeah, that makes so much more sense. If I'm gonna be a mage, I'm gonna get all the mage gear. But
Yeah.
if I want to transfer to range, yeah, I need to stack up. So it's applying it to life. If I'm going with the grain, one action will move me towards against the grain. And I'll get some feedback. People won't like it, all that. But the more I stack against the grain, the more I become the outcast. And that's like you said, that's why we got this whole side of Twitter that everybody is going completely against the grain. They're going on Twitter. It's this small community because I go outside and I tell someone I'm taking whatever it is, methylene blue, I'm using coconut oil for lotion, whatever it is. People will call me crazy. Egg for shampoo. People are going to call me absolutely nuts because, like you said, I never thought of it that way either. Is hypnosis. People use the word psyop a lot.
Sure.
I think
Yes.
I think hypnosis would dumb it down. People always psyop this, psyop that, psyop this. Hypnosis, you like that's what's going on. Like
Yeah.
you're getting hypnotized into believing this is what we need to be doing or whatever it is. So I never
Right.
really thought about that. When did you grow up faithful? Did you grow up in
Oh
any
yeah. Cool.
religion or anything?
So this is what's been. Yeah. No. Thanks, man. This is really cool. When I was a child, my mom has always been religious, and growing up since like she worked a lot and she didn't have a car, and my dad was in the hospital. Um, well, I guess like we had a car, but she didn't drive. Um, she wanted me to go to private school, and the closest one was a Lutheran school, and like we were Catholic, and what was interesting was like the priest. I didn't know at the time, but the priest kind of like did like a hodgepodge between like Lutheran and Catholic.
Okay.
And he was there till I was like in third grade, and then that was the year he passed away. It was the same year as my dad, and that last I was there one more year, and that last year they were looking for a priest, and they got like an Irish Catholic priest to do the mass. So like it transitioned from like this hybrid Lutheran Catholic to like straight up Catholic. And I was like,
Yeah.
whoa. And I remember like hearing the differences in the prayers, like different words and stuff. It was like not too different, but a different enough. And I was
Enough
like,
to
huh.
confuse a child.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What was cool was my experience there was like the community was super, it was awesome. Like every Sunday, like everyone would congregate in like what was called the Fretheim room. That was like a memorial room. And there would be a bake sale, people would be bringing stuff for us to eat, we'd be hanging out, all the kids are there. Often we would go to someone else's house in the neighborhood because everyone was local. Someone would like we'd like get put together money for food, do some grilling. All the kids are playing in the backyard or something. We'd go for a walk to the park that wasn't not too far from there, and like it was very wholesome. When I moved, I went to a Catholic school this time, and I guess like we just didn't get it. It was a bigger community, and like my mom was kind of going through depression herself because my father passed away, so we didn't get as involved in the community. But it's always been a part of my life. Like I always, I guess also too in like high school, I went to a Catholic high school, and I lucked out that my theology teacher, he was a Franciscan, like a friar, and I got him like there's a bunch of different theology teachers, and I wound up getting him every year, and he was just like really versed in like world history and the Bible. And so he would tell us like what events were happening in the world as these passages were being written. Like you got to
Mhm.
understand, like in Syria, this was happening, this was happening. I was like, this is crazy, because it gave so much context to like the passages, and I was like, oh, okay, and it made a lot more sense. And it's always been in the back of my mind. I guess I've always aspired to be Christ-like, because I don't know. I guess that it's just always been an inclination. It hasn't been like a conscious choice. It's just been like more of a driving factor. I guess maybe kind of feeling that energy from community growing up and wanting to be that way. Um, and because of that, that's kind of been my, yeah, like my foundation, my cornerstone, like to always be striving to that ideal, right? Because it's
Yeah.
not easy to attain, but it's like a lifelong journey. And then like when I see people being that way, like I'm like, oh, it reminds me of like a colleague I met, Larry Garrett. He so I got certified in hypnosis in New York. And then when I came back, I was looking for a practice to work under, like a person that has their own office. And so many hypnotists have moved to just like one-on-one work, like we see like in Twitter, like over Zoom. So one lady I reached out to is like, hey, you should really meet this gentleman, Larry Garrett. He has a wellness center in your neighborhood. And I was like, cool. And over time, like talking to him and conversing, he told me how he used to volunteer at like Cook County, and he worked with like all sorts of people that have done some like heavy shit. And I remember that time I was just like, I was kind of bitter. I was like, how could you work with like a rapist? Like, how could you work with
Mhm.
like a person that's like, you know, done these atrocious things? And like, just by having that question in my head, you know, I began to get answers. Like, the more I like kind of hung out with them, conversed, mulled over that question, I was like, damn, like, you know, who, it kind of goes back to the whole my brother thing. Like, number one, who am I to judge? Number two, what are they saying to themselves? Number three, even if they're not wanting to atone and they like relish in what they've done, it's there's that compassion, empathy kind of element. Like, you know, seeing what's in there, seeing the light that they might be clouding and like trying to bury down. And that, okay, this kind of goes full circle. I guess because with my addiction, I had not similar but different, right? Like, I kind of, when the light was kind of trying to come through me and I was trying to be a better person, there was this resentment that would just like want to crush it. Like, no. And like keep it down and like almost like kill that part of me, you know? And like,
Yeah.
you know, if I've gone through that, so this kind of goes to JP, Jordan Peterson. What really hit home was when he was talking about Cain and Abel, and when he was talking about like Cain is the negating force and like Abel being that light. I was like, damn, like I've felt that. Like, that's it's so cool that like we captured that story and that kind of like interplay inside in that story through like, you know, two characters, I real or not, you know. I know there's a lot of
Mhm.
speculation and stuff, but like either way, like even if you don't believe, there's a lot of wisdom in the Bible. And having that frame, like now it's like I'm always trying to cultivate Abel. And what's cool is like when Abel's in that place, then it can be like a parent to Cain, so Cain feels heard, understood, and they can come together. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've seen like those memes of like the like a white wolf and a black wolf, or like, you know, Young often talks about the shadow, but like they don't have to be at odds. Like when they come together, they can achieve like so many different things. Like, because if
Yeah.
you're just a light, this came up with my friend and his family. Like, if your family, if like aggressor is coming after your kids, right? You have to tap into that shadow, right? Like, you don't have to, but what will happen? Like, if you're trying to be, oh, it's okay, and like that kind of energy, like, no, like, if you don't get aggressive and like establish the boundary and, you know, I guess stop the threat, neutralize the threat in the moment, right? Like, what's going to happen later? You can have, and I guess that was what was really a mind fuck for me, is like having compassion while you're doing that. Like, you know, having respect and dignity for the person, like kind of treating it like almost like if you're getting in the ring together, like respecting your opponent. Like, all right, we're doing this. Like, you don't hate them. It's like like what's human and human. Like, let's tap into what we're made out of. Like, do this and see what happens. You know, all this stuff is just like you're saying. Like, it's hard to find. You don't. I don't know. I don't. It's hard to find in like society or culture. Like, people don't teach you this.
No,
Um,
no. You have to teach. It's like that's what I'm saying. It seems like anybody who's found the light has gone through the darkness, and yeah, just like Jordan Peterson, tame your dragon. You need to have the black wolf. You need to be able to use the black wolf. Otherwise, you'll just get ran over 10 times out of 10. And this actually happened. There was a guy. He was taunting my brother at the bar. I was sober. This guy was wasted. He's taunting my brother, wanting to fight my brother over and over again. It wasn't anything serious. My brother didn't do anything wrong, but I'm more of the aggressive person. And like you said, it was still having that respect to know like this guy is wasted. And if I didn't go in the army, I wouldn't have thought of this because when I went in the army and I went overseas and came back, in my mind, what was running was, you know, those people I assisted in, I assisted the United States in neutralizing threats. Those threats, like if I was raised over there, what kind of person would I be? Would I be with them? And there's a huge clip, a viral clip of the guy who killed bin Laden going around saying, you know, who was this guy? If I met him at a bar, you know, would we get along? Was he a funny guy? Stuff like that. And so when I came back and I saw this guy, that's what I thought was, you know, this guy's wasted. What's why's he got to be wasted? what's going on in his life. And it I was still amped up, but I didn't do anything. I was still like you said, still amped up, but still having that respect for the person to be like, all right, what is kind of going on here? Does this guy really mean this? What's happening in his life? Did he just lose his wife, his job, his mom, his brother, his sister, anything? That piece of empathy can go a very long way because who knows? It was three against one. If I started something, if he started something, this guy, who knows what would have happened? This guy would have just been paying more price for whatever happened in his life. I didn't piss him off. My brother didn't piss him off. He came pissed off. So
Right.
something has pissed him off, and having that empathy in a situation like that is massive. It's incredible to be able to do.
Sure.
But going back to what you said about the Bible, that's exactly how I got into it. It's like, yeah, this may not all be true, may not all be true, but there is a lesson in each story in there. There's a moral to take from each story, and that's when I started to really dive deep into the Bible, start going to church and all of that. Because once you start understanding that, it's, I mean, it'll change your life. Because listening to you, you grow up with faith. It was always in the back of your head, kind of. You knew about it. I didn't. I was, I mean, up until 2021, I didn't think about it at all. I was just living my life and whatever you want to, just living life. And to see someone who grew up in it with kind of the same viewpoints as me right now, it feels good to to be in that type of spot,
Sure.
if that makes, like
Yeah.
it's incredible. Um yeah, I think faith also gets a bad rap if because like you said, if we had faith combined, what you said, if we had faith plus
The placebo effect, maybe.
the placebo effect. Yeah, if we didn't have the placebo effect and we didn't have people shitting on faith, where would the society be?
Oh, yeah. Like, whew, okay. Yeah.
You know?
So that's what's wild. Kind of taking a step back. That's why. So I wanted to kind of take a going back to Twitter. Fuck, I am so glad I somehow found Twitter. I've been very
Mhm.
averse to social media since like 2020. Well, even before that. Like, I saw so many people just scrolling their life away. And
Yep.
like when I first got like my phone, I turned off like all notifications, didn't download any social media apps. I was like, I am not becoming a slave to this thing. I've seen what happens, you know. I'm gonna insulate myself against it. And sure, it's made life a little bit more difficult, like when people are trying to get a hold of me and stuff, whatever in the moment. But like I'm just so glad I never developed that habit of, like, zzz, like just
Yeah.
instantly pulled out of the present moment because like a notification's going off. So fast forwarding to Twitter, like it's really inspiring to see, like me and my one friend, like we were super close growing up, and like it was cool. It was interesting to see, like, even though like our paths would diverge, like we were always on the same path. Like in the back of our head, we were always holding that like Christ energy, and like we were still spiritual when it came to stuff like that. We went into like mysticism and stuff, like occultism, all that kind of stuff, magic with a K, just to explore like all aspects of like experience. Um but because of that, we were always very on top of like how can we be the best versions of ourselves. And so like back in like 2009 and 10, we were taking like apple cider vinegar, eating garlic. We are doing what everyone on health Twitter's doing.
Wow.
But it was so not mainstream that it was like you were saying, I'd go out and feel crazy. Like I was like, oh, like we started doing paleo in like 2012, powerlifting around then, like 2012, 2013. um and we knew about it. I found out about light therapy back in like 2014. I was an affiliate marketer for like this site. They worked with like athletes, so it was just like red and near infrared light. And because there was no research, I used it on myself. Like I healed my wrists, and I was like, this is fucking crazy. Because like
Yeah.
just long story short, like I caught a clean. I used to do like Olympic lifting, and I caught a clean like really bad. I was so committed. I was like, I got to get this. And I was in my apartment, and I couldn't drop the weight, so I caught it all janky and like messed my wrist up for like months. And then I found out about light therapy, used it, and in one session it was gone. I was like, what? Like I thought I was fucked for life.
Yeah.
Um, but like trying to tell people that at the time, like I was new to the internet, I didn't know about like funnels and stuff so well. I was trying to help people like locally, and no one knew the hell like light therapy was. And now it's cool to see not only all of this stuff is more mainstream in this pocket. Like there's and it what I like is it's very there's like a huge reinforcement. Like you see all these people doing it, you see the results they're doing. It's kind of like and this is the positive side of hypnosis, I guess, or like social programming, is like when you find your tribe, quote unquote, and you see people doing and inspiring to be the person you want to be, it's a lot easier to be that way because it's
Oh
constantly
man.
reinforcing that,
Yeah,
you
and
know?
that's what I wanna tap into is when you go out, like, when I go out and do anything and I meet someone and somehow we get on this type of topic, and I say, "Yeah, I wash my hair with eggs." Like, I worked at Home Depot 6 months ago, and there was this older lady, probably in her 75, 80s, from Ukraine, and she came in, she was upset about the prices. So me and her were just talking, just having a good time. Just talking about the prices, talking about how everything's bottled in plastic, how everything's going downhill, how the shampoo, everything is just not good. And so I brought up, yeah, I shampoo my hair with egg. And the look on her face when she heard that, she like, where did you find that from? And it was so fun in my head. I'm like, haha, Twitter, let's go. And then
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah, I just started looking stuff up online. I got out of the army and everything started going downhill, so I was like, how could I be the better version of myself?" And that's exactly what it was. I told her this and her face lit up. She said, "How old are you?" I said, "I'm 25." She said, "And you're on this path. Good for you. We were washing our hair with eggs in Eastern Europe back." She was like, "Back in the old days, 50 years ago. That's an Eastern European thing, and now it's made it all the way to you, 25 years old." So when you find that person who understands it and is part of that space, like you said, you're like, "Oh my god, I need to be the best version of myself because this person's trying to be the best version of their self." And we could go so deep on this topic because if we're in this space, dude, this didn't come out of nowhere. If we're all, taking Sheila Jeet or whatever it is, this didn't come out of nowhere. We've all hit a bottom. So what it's a litmus test for me. If you know about raw milk, you know about Sheila's Jeet, any of these holistic supplements, you're washing your hair with egg, you're using hand soap that's made with essential oils, stuff like that. If you're doing that, I know something happened to you and I know we can converse. We can converse on that level and then we can converse on how we got to the level we're at now and what we're doing now. Like it's just such a deeper conversation when you meet someone like this.
100%. Yeah, like, and that's what's been so fun. Like, and that's why I'm lucky myself. Like, and this I guess kind of okay. So there's a lot of open loops in a good way. Kind of going back to faith in s- spirit, right? Like being in the
Mhm.
right place, right time, serendipity kind of stuff. Um, Whenever I kind of like set my head down on a path and was very dedicated, like the openings and opportunities and people just like kind of like find me or I'd find them, and it just kind of blew me away. Like, um, I'm a long time ago when when I set my heart on hypnosis, I started practicing it and I wanted to get really good before the actual training, and I started going to like meetups, kind of like alternative medicine kind of meetups, just to get a sense of like what's out there now. That's how I found out about light therapy. And at that event, I ran into like two of my really good friends, like Tom and Shelly, and they were like kind of like health Twitter before it existed. You know, like she taught me about like using egg to like wash your hair to get rid of
Mhm.
dandruff and stuff. And Tom, I mean, he trains Olympic skaters. Like he's trained like hockey players that go into the Olympics.
Oh, nice. I'm a
So,
hockey guy, so that's awesome.
oh, for sure. So like he's also trained with Paul Check for like tons of years. He knows JP Sears. I don't know if you're familiar with JP Sears.
No.
Okay. But it was just kind of cool to get like all these physiology tips and like like how to improve my posture, also health and stuff. Like she had a doctor friend that like she learned how to read like blood samples. Like if I were to get my blood done, she would be able to like read the levels, and it was kind of cool. Like when she would teach me about that, it reminded me of like the nutrition facts on food. Like it'll be like, oh, this is like 10 grams of protein is like you know, like what, like 16% of the protein you need for the day. You know, like,
Mhm.
oh, this has got like 20% of your vitamin A, but the levels are so abysmal. You really
Yeah.
need like this much, you know? So like when it says this is like 100%, what they mean is like you really need this much for 100%. So she'd be showing me the levels. And she's like, yeah, so like a normal doctor would say like this is good, this is all right, this is good, but really this is all trash. Like you want this. This is what you really want. So like this is what where you can improve. And here's like natural foods you can eat that has these things so you can get there. And I was like, damn, like, you know, so I guess that's what's been kind of fun on in two ways is um it's for me I love learning, and this is so the opposite of school, like where you just go into like a cubicle and like things just come at you. You have to like do it's like investigative journaling. You got to like
Yeah.
find people that know this shit, you
Yeah.
know?
You find something you're interested in, like you're saying, once you're interested, you're on that path. Somehow it just people just start flowing your way.
Yeah. Yeah, to answer the questions and connect and like and not and then I guess like the most therapeutic aspect is you don't feel crazy anymore. You know? Because like you don't well, it's I guess it comes down to isolation and tribes again, you know, like when like you don't have that tribe and like you're trying to cut out that space and be this way and everything's just starting trying to like not even intentionally, but just kind of like making a comment like, oh, that's never gonna work. Why are you wasting your time? Get a 9 to 5. You know what I mean? Like, why are you doing that? That's crazy.
This is
Like
my family to a T, man.
right?
Yeah.
Like it takes a lot of like inner like self-worth, conviction, like belief in yourself to like shield yourself against the what do you call the haters, right?
Yeah.
Uh and so like I you know my whole life I've been very much an individual and like kind of just hovered on the outskirts. Me and my friend basically like we were like outcasts whatever. Um okay, cool. So like it feels good to start to be part of tribes nowadays to like to do this because like I've been missing it. And this kind of goes back full circle to the question you asked a long time ago, like as far as faith and addiction, even like and being the best version of ourselves. Like when I was like really young, I got that idea in my head somewhere. I think like Star Wars kind of helped, like the Force and stuff. But when
Mhm.
I was in like high school, like when I was 12, I was at the mall with my friend because my friend Edwin that I keep talking about, he's like 4 years older than me. Um, we were hanging out with some of his friends, and like this one kid was like 17, and he was just like, "I'm so happy, I'm so happy," and he kept like licking his lips, and it was interesting. I was like, "What's going on with this guy?" You know, I'm 12, and like he was telling us how he just got prescribed Prozac, and he's just like he's just so happy, he's just so happy, and like he was licking his lips, and I was like, "That's some interesting behavior. Like, what's going on?" You know, and so that was like my first exposure to what I would consider like the over medication of like the past generation, you know. Because shortly after meeting him, you know, I met another kid that had ADD. It was before the H was in there, you know, and he was on medicine. And he was acting a little quirky too, like just like really like he looked like he wasn't really there, but like really,
Mhm.
really there. Like this like mix between like spaced out but like focused. And I was like, this is interesting. So, you know, throughout high school, I started going to like house parties and stuff and just I would just approach people. I was like very I mean, I grew up punk rock. So I was already very like rebellious and anti-mainstream. And I would
Yeah.
just like talk shit about like I don't know the little bit of stuff I knew about politics. Like, oh man, why are we doing this? Like, why aren't we spending more taxpayer money here and stuff? It's like a fucking kid, right? Like acting like I knew shit. But what was humbling is I wasn't like so held on to my beliefs that when like someone like 4 or 5 years older that would come to me and be like, actually, like subtly like you're kind of an idiot because this reason like they wouldn't call me an
Yeah.
idiot but you know that kind of like tone like all right little kid you know and
Yeah.
then like I'm like oh okay and so then I was more versed in my arguments then I would like alter them I'm like okay I can see I was a little too crazy I was a little too much on this side it's more like this so then I would bring that to a person but at some point I would just you know a lot of people were on medication so I would just ask them about their journey like what was it like before the medication what was the turning point where you got on the medication? What's it like
Mhm.
now that you're on the medication? And like it was like 90% of people, 95 even would say like half of them so like it was like a mix between ADHD and depression, right? And like all the people on like antidepressive medication would say it's like worse. Like they would rather get off the medicine. They feel hollow. They don't feel alive anymore. And they're scared shitless because they tried quitting. And like that's when they got like suicidal ideation. And it was just
Mhm.
like they got scared that they got back on the medication. And so like me, rebellious, anti-mainstream, I'm sitting here thinking like, hmm, what kind of solution is this? Like, all these people are worse off on the medication, and what is
Yeah.
this medication actually doing, And so I just got curious because, like, I'm just thinking, like, if all these people were reporting it was better before the medication, what the fuck is it actually doing for them? And this was back in like the 90s, right? So we've come a long way. Like people have probably been thinking the same thing over time, and like now we know, this is why I've always kind of been against big pharma, and like it has nothing to do with 2020. It just comes down to the fact that I saw these people like suffering more on these pills than before, and I didn't know how to help them then, other than like have a conversation, like give them a shoulder to lean on, like be like it's okay, like offer the support that I could in the moment. And like I think that was really, I don't know, it was weird. It was awesome growing up in high school just cuz like I was in so many different circles and like I knew a lot of people. But like I only had like one foot in, one foot out. Like I could never like fully commit cuz I just didn't, I don't know, I didn't trust, I guess. Like cuz
Yeah.
like what we're talking about, like I didn't want to be caught out like, oh man, you think some crazy stuff. You think I can fix my problems? You think like I don't need these pills and stuff? Like I wouldn't like get all like vehement, like you don't need these medications and stuff. I would just be where they are, and offer support, not like make them feel stupid or something for being on a medication. Or like some people do, like, I can't believe you're on this. You got to change your life. Everyone has a
Yeah.
different approach, but it kind of this has always kind of been in the background. Is just like opening the door instead of like shoving a person through it. It's just like, hey, here's an option that you might want to check out. I don't know, it helped this person, and just like, oh, I didn't even know this was an option. Thanks, and then they can go down a rabbit hole if they choose.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and
Planting the seed.
yes, planting the seeds 100%. But yeah, like okay, there's a couple different threads. Going back to the placebo effect, and that's where it kind of got interesting. Like even before hypnosis, I heard some like a lot of anecdotes about people just basically cancer going into remission and stuff. So I got curious about that, like, because I had a lot of people in my family undergo cancer, and like they were just on the chemo trip for like 4 or 5 years, suffered immensely, and then passed away. Right. So when I'm hearing about people like actually like putting cancer in remission without chemo, I'm like, what the fuck? Like this is an option. Like, how does this work? So then I started seeking people that have done that and just asking them about their story. And more than it's been interesting is like a big proponent had been like lifestyle changes as far as health, kind of like what like health Twitter kind of promotes, like seed oils, eating whole foods, getting away from processed shit. But also there was always this element of like laughter, letting go, not like laughter, letting go, and fulfillment, kind of like finally taking the time to do what they love. So there's like a lot of like that got me curious. Like it's not so much about what's like the most important. This kind of goes back to like the levers, or like if you're a mage and
Mhm. Uh-oh.
sorry,
There you
like if I'm wanting to put my cancer in remission, what are all the things I can do that will like nudge that into my favor of putting in remission? So like
Yeah.
stay away from processed foods, stretching, exercise, light exercise, maybe even cold exposure, um, taking time to just laugh, having that levity when it comes to life. Don't take things so serious. Like don't get worked up. And then like you're saying about that, the hypothetical, like I'm angry in the morning, like let go of the anger. What's, all these different things that can help you do that. So that's kind of the path that inevitably led to hypnosis, because I was like, wait, so you can like systemize this? Like, you know what I mean? Like it
Yeah,
doesn't
we could
have to be
have
all
all
over the
the
place. Like,
answers.
well,
Yeah.
and I guess that's what's the coolest part about it is, and I see the power in prayer too, is it's a reinforcer. Like whatever path you're on, what you're thinking about the things you're doing. So if like say I'm like taking like healthy, like I'm eating healthy and taking supplements, but in the back of my mind I'm like, this doesn't do anything for me. This isn't helping. Like now I'm it's got a potential to help somewhere in here, right? But because that's the approach I'm going from it, I'm going to get a lot less out of those supplements than if I was like, oh my god, I feel amazing. Oh my god, my
Yeah.
energy levels. This is really helping. I can feel the changes. I know it's working. That's going to enhance anything I do. So in my head, it was like, if I'm going to take the time to do something, why wouldn't I enhance it and get the most out of it with like mindset and hypnosis instead of kind of like what's called the nocebo, undermine what I'm doing by saying how it's never going to work out and pulling like an Eeyore, like, oh,
Yeah.
you know, like, oh no, why am I even doing this? You know, like,
Yeah.
so, um, yeah, it's interesting. I know I've been rambling, but there's
No,
like
dude, I
a
love it.
lot
This
of
is what I love doing.
connections.
This is what I love doing because until you start talking about it is when you don't make those connect. Like once you start talking about it, it happens every time I'm on a podcast. Things
Oh no,
start clicking for me
I
from
can't
hearing someone
hear
else.
you.
Oh,
I got a stupid spam call on my phone, and then that's why like my camera went out for a second. But now I can't hear you.
oh no. Refresh.
I'm
How
gonna
do I?
have I
Yeah.
damn.
How do I say? Does it look like a refresh? There we go. Thanks y'all for tuning in. This is good times. I'm gonna actually rip the ad here. Oh, there he is.
Okay,
Oh,
I
we're
can
back.
hear you again. I just refreshed.
All right. All right. Yeah, no, that's what I was saying is you really start putting pieces together when you start talking about it. And that's why I liked doing the podcast is because I could see the like you're saying, you could see the light and the spark when someone's talking. And for me, you could talk the whole 100 or whole hour and a half of the podcast. I'll listen to every little bit of it, and it's constant where I'm just letting people talk, and when they wait for my response and I don't say anything, they keep going. So it's like, oh, let him go, and when I push back and say I'm not saying anything, go ahead, they keep going, and this happens. I use it daily. I went on a date and I did it, and I just let her talk. She kept going, and oh, like you said, oh, I feel like I'm rambling. I said, no, you're fine. And then she had more to say. But, like once you let them go, dots start connecting. I love being that dot connector for people. Let them talk because I mentioned this a lot. Like you're saying, my family is. I can't talk too much about all this to them because it doesn't make sense to them. I There's not much input they can give me for connecting dots. But when I'm talking to them, I may connect some dots. When I'm talking about my story, anything like that, the people I tell my story, who am I going to tell my story? My friends, my family, the ones that have been here for the story. Do they really want to hear my story? How many times can I tell them my story before they're like, dude, come on. Like, how many, you're going to keep coming back to this, you know? So when I get people on the podcast, just let them talk. It's seeing that light bulb they got. Just like you said, I'm watching every episode. I'm watching people. Oh my God. Yeah. Oh my God. And then it happens to me when someone's saying something like you're saying, even I've been saying life is a video game for a long time. I never dove too much into it, but now I'm selling online. I'm selling life insurance online. When I'm clicking call and they hang up or whatever, it feels like a video game. I go on to the next boss. I click call again, and that's the next boss. I get an objection. I got to beat that one. Once I beat that one, of course, there's another one. Now I got to beat this one. But even tapping into the gear I'm wearing, I never thought about the gear I'm wearing when I'm going into these calls. Um, I don't know. I never thought that deep into it. That's genius. And then when you say laughter, take the time to laugh. I felt extremely guilty. I want to say it was Saturday or Friday. Friday, I was supposed to be making calls. I'm supposed to be making calls to make sales. I ended up there's I ended up getting into meme coins on accident because there's one on Twitter called Trend
Yeah.
and they were holding a space. So I hopped in the space. I'm like, all right, I got about 30 minutes to an hour till I gotta leave. This space, I haven't laughed that hard in so long. And I laugh a lot. I have not. I was dying, and then I became a speaker in the space, and now the space is
Oh.
going on for 3.5 hours, and the whole time I'm thinking to myself, man, I should be doing work. And then when I thought that, I'm like, dude, how often do I get to laugh like this? I could take the time back to laugh, and just like you said, it just calms you down. Like you laugh, everything is lighter when you laugh. everything. You see the beauty in everything. If someone cuts you off in the highway
Oh,
and you're already laughing like I'm listening to a comedy show, I don't care. This comedy show is so funny. I don't care. Cut me off. Get your brother in here to cut me off. It doesn't matter to me. And I don't know. It's cool to see. Like I said, when we're all putting these pieces together, that's what this is for. And I mean, you've been doing great, man. It's not a ramble to me. It's because to you, you know all this knowledge. To you,
yes,
you've been through this knowledge. To people listening, they may not know. And
right,
for me, when like, let's say someone's giving a whole spiel on methylene blue or whatever it is, how, in effect, the egg can help your hair. If someone's giving a spiel on that, I want to hear as much as I can. I want you to go on as long as you can because I don't
right,
know about it. So, like, that's where it gets tricky. People, I'm thinking about this stuff all the time. So when I'm talking about it, I'm going through it. I'm constantly talking on the podcast, whatever it is. It's like, okay, yeah, sure, I know this. It may be getting boring to me because I've said this 20 times before, but the people that are listening, the oddballs that have just tuned in or whatever it is, they haven't. So when they hear this, it's not hearing it again. They're hearing it for the first time, and then they get
yeah,
enticed by whatever you're saying.
yeah. No, thank you. And I honestly, whew, I'm really grateful for this opportunity. Like, I mean, because I came on, I wanted to just share whatever I could to, if people were in the boat that I was in, or like the people in the parties back in the day where they were feeling that depressed to the point where they're thinking of suicide. I just wanted this space to kind of provide whatever I could that might help, right? And what I didn't realize, like you're saying, is this kind of curse of knowledge, like it's helped me. Like I was saying at the beginning of the call, that I was excited that like I'm kind of finally honing in on my niche. This has been helping me see like, so there's a book called Mastery by Robert Greene that like I've listened to the audiobook like I don't know how many times. But the premise is like we're all born with like a vocation, with an inclination, with like a life's purpose. And his idea is it's the intersection of our like core interests. So a person, there might be like all these computer programmers. They like to program on computers. But then there's like a specific computer programmer that's into like the stuff that we're into. Maybe they're a power lifter, an athlete, they're Christian. So like computer science is just one part of the intersection of all their core, like their core personality.
Yeah.
So how they embody all of that through computer science is kind of their niche or their life's calling. Um and
Okay.
like yeah, so like
Mhm.
I'm kind of seeing by kind of like recapping my history, I'm kind of seeing what my inclination has been this whole time, kind of like community support, helping people access mind over matter, like not needing medication. Because then what happened is later I was dating a girl and she was on a lot of medication, and I just planted like all these seeds about because I was like, I don't know, like I was kind of a little adamant, like I will agree, but maybe it was just the right amount of energy, like the right amount of like connection, empathy, compassion, like not forcing, right? Just like letting her be, but also just enough force with the seeds that they like got into the soil. Um, because we worked through, because then like yeah, like she asked for support to help her wean off all the medication, and she got
Mhm.
off all the medication except for one, which is fine, because that was more, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an expert. Like, but the other ones, it was more like depression, anxiety, and stuff like that. She was on
Yeah.
like Vyvanse and stuff. And I think the big turning point, I guess, like I've just been in the fields. Like, I think that's what I love doing is just like being in it. Like, since I had addiction, like I knew what meth was like, the effect of meth. So one day, and I kind of felt like, because when it comes to big pharma, or at least like medication like this for ADHD and depression, like they'll kind of make it seem like, oh, you're not a doctor, you're not an expert, you don't know what you're talking about. You can't have an opinion. So I kind of felt
Mhm.
that way. Like, I guess like this imposter syndrome when I was talking about ADHD, because at least with depression, I knew almost unequivocally, like everyone on it was worse off than before. But with ADHD, a lot of people liked that feeling, so it was hard. Like to them, it was better that they're on it, and I was like, okay. So she said that she had ADHD, and my whole I mean, I was lucky enough to like read books in the past that were that was like on meditation, focus,
Mhm.
memory, and stuff like that. So my whole premise was like okay, so there's no such thing as attention deficit because we're not born with it. It's a skill. So if people don't have attention, it's a skill they haven't trained and
Ooh,
practiced, right? Like, and
wow.
if you'd like
Yeah.
more attention, like practice focus, practice meditation, just a minute a day builds on, builds up. That was like the premise I was operating with. And then like one day I don't know, I got like terrible sleep. I was like tossing and turning through the night. I think it was the first time I experienced sleep apnea. And I like woke up like not being able to breathe, and I was terrified to go back to sleep because I thought I was gonna die. So I was just like on edge all night. And then finally like at 6:30 I'm like starting to pass out, but I had work at 7 or like 8 or whatever. And I'm like, oh my god, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. And she's like, oh, you want one of my Vyvanse? And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So like I took it, and then like, I'm like driving to work, and I get there, and all of a sudden I'm like, holy fuck. I just took meth. Like, and I'm like, oh shit. And like I mean, I'm not gonna condone drug use, but like was like this epiphany moment, like fuck, like I in my head, like Vyvanse and like what's the other one? Adderall. It's just
Yeah.
glorified. It's just like rebranded meth. Like,
Yeah.
and then and then it makes so much sense like why like people are able to like game out and just like fucking grind like World of Warcraft for 12 hours straight and like hyper focus. It's fucking meth, man. Like, you know what I mean? So at that moment
Yeah.
I was like, oh shit. So anyway, long story short, I helped her get off the medication. And then I'm just like, yeah, I guess I feel good about that. Like opening those doors, she started doing paleo, she lost all this weight, she reversed her diabetes, takes care of herself. She at some point she was more diligent than I was as far as like, using eggs for washing her hair, like doing all the things, supplements and stuff. And then it was kind of this cool back and forth. Like when I would notice I was kind of slacking, I would see her routine and be like, oh, step back up. And like we kind of like kept each other accountable in that way, not like on purpose, like, hey, I see you're slacking. It was just like by seeing it, it helped
Right.
me feel like that's what I want to be like, you know. And so it felt good, like knowing that I can assist a person to get off medications that might not be the best. But like when she first met me, she was like, I don't want to say a train wreck, but kind of like emotionally wise, like she was struggling with suicidal ideation, didn't like feel fulfilled, like felt very aimless and lost, just like like operating in a fog, every day kind of blurred into the next. And so like I hadn't really considered this amount because it was like 10 years ago, right? So to kind of like revisit and think about how much of a transformation she had just from like, I guess, me being me in a way,
Yeah.
it's inspiring. Like, and to know that like I've helped other people not as dramatically as that, but like that's kind of what I want to bring to people. This is like my calling, I guess. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And I attribute it to the ability to be that outcast guy. I I've always have been, and like you said, it's a lot of people that don't wanna go against the grain, and that's something that doesn't scare me. I've gotten
for
to the
sure.
point where I go against the grain, man, and you guys don't like it, see ya. And that's kinda what I wanna be, that bridge, like you're saying, like the person that's already thinking about it but doesn't wanna do it because it's against the grain. I wanna be that guy who's already doing it against the grain. They could look at me and say, like you're saying, I wanna be like him. I wanna reach that type of level. What do I gotta do? And it's it starts with the self-belief. It starts with the meditation. It starts with being able to be here right now so that you could hone in on yourself. We don't have time to do we have time. We don't ever do that. We don't ever do that. You go to school your whole life and you're looking at all these other kids, a million inputs every single day as a kid. You never take time to sit down and think about yourself, think about what you want to be. You know, one thing that I was listening to, it was actually it was keep bringing up Jordan Peterson, but Dr. Phil went on Jordan Peterson, and Dr. Phil said he would start asking people, "Who are you?"
Oh,
and
okay.
and they would respond with their occupation. I'm a locksmith. I'm this. I'm this. I'm this. He's like, not your occupation. Who are you? And I use that again at the date. I was like, all right, tell me who you are. First date, I said, who are you? And for someone who's 20, 21, someone young like that, and myself, I'm 25, I never thought of that question. We're never asked that question. It's always, what do you want to be when you grow up? All that stuff. We're never asked, who are you? So I never get to think about who I really am. And when I fire that question out to somebody, you could see the gears turning. So it's like, I've always been this way. I'm like, all right, well, are you? Like, oh, I've always been nice to people. Okay. Is that who you are? Or are you doing that because somebody else wants you to be nice? And that question like dives deep into helping someone get away or go against the grain. Because once you have that belief and that's who I am, I believe I'm here to love. I believe I'm here to teach. Those are the two biggest things I believe I'm here to do.
Yeah.
Teach and love, because both of those, love can, I mean, it's broad, of course, but that's what I believe this world is for. That's the number one thing we should all be striving for. And when I have that belief, who's going to steer me wrong? Who's going to steer me in the other direction? So I already have this belief. And like you said, you hop on all these sites and you hop on Twitter, you start seeing other people being the outcast. You start seeing, okay, this is possible. I can go and do this. And is we love the credibility. You see people with 150,000 followers being this wacky person. My favorite, Nardwar,
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah, dude, Nardwar.
the
Oh my god.
wackiest dude on the face of the earth, having interviews with Snoop Dogg. How many interviews does Snoop Dogg do? How many interviews
Like
do all these
16.
rappers do? But they do them with Nardwar. And this dude is the wackiest, the craziest dude. And it's all just, that's who he is. And he found a way to use that to his advantage. And that's what it's all about, is helping someone find it, and then they got to use it. So
100%.
our paths are aligning here. I love it, dude.
Oh, for sure. No, and like, oh man, there's so many full circle moments. So, yeah, like that goes back to mastery, the inclination, soul's purpose, tapping into that. I kind of wanted to take a step back to like, because after helping my girlfriend with that, like, I found out about hypnosis. Um, oh man, there's so much. I'm trying to see how I can like wrap it up. Well, I actually found NLP first, neuro linguistic programming, and okay, so I was powerlifting, injured myself, felt like I was neglecting the mental capacity because I was like working out like 6 days a week, 3 hour trainings, and like some mornings some like every other day I would do a double morning and night. Like I was basically just working, eating, and working out. Like, and like I was like fucking strong. But when I injured myself, I was like, all right, maybe it's time to like go the complete other extreme and just like learn speed reading. So like I learned speed reading, got like self-help and psychology books, one of which was like NLP. I was reading it, I was nodding along the whole time. I was like, oh man, this all makes sense. It got to a point like they're talking about like the origin story. And so it was a linguist and a computer scientist, and they were interested in like human programming, like how language programs humans, quote unquote. And th- because the one was a computer scientist, it's all about modeling. It's all about like, okay, how can we take this process that exists in the world and code it into a system so that a computer can like do that. Like if anyone's familiar with like Java, like if I were making a video game, you kind of start with like the most abstract thing, like living entity, and then you create like a tier to where you get down to like cow. And so like every
Mhm.
step of the way there's gonna be characteristics like form and stuff to where you get to cow, and that makes cow. So you model what a cow is through your programming. And they want to know how to do that. So they looked to like the top therapists of the time, which was like Virginia Satir, Fritz Perls, and Milton Erickson. Milton Erickson being a hypnotist. And I mean, he was doing it for like 55 years and had like amazing success. So what they did is they just kind of like sat in, like and transcribed sessions, sat in and listened to tonality, listened to like what they were doing. Alongside that channel, what they were doing was what they kind of their big gripe with like therapy in general was it didn't seem to be effective. Like you had like these like couple outliers
Mhm.
doing like that were super successful, and then like more often than not it was like a 10%, 20% success rate. It was really poor for like general like practitioners. And what they realized is like all these psychologists of the time are studying people who have problems. So they got really good at knowing how to have a problem.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
their approach was they're like, okay, so if we want to deal with phobias, how can we find out how to get over a phobia? They would put out a newspaper, like a classified ad, like, hey, if you used to have a fear of flying and no longer do, we will pay you X amount of money to come just talk to us and explain what happened, like how how you did this. So they interviewed like hundreds and hundreds of people that used to have a phobia and just just word vomit, kind of like this, just like a huge 1 hour and a half
Yeah.
session, like because for them it's common knowledge. Like, yeah, it was easy. I did these things, and then I wasn't afraid anymore. But for them, they're like, every story is going to be unique. So they just took copious notes, and then they like distilled it down to patterns. And from
Okay.
that, they found out like what we have is like the fast phobia cure. It's it's kind of like a hodgepodge of different strategies people use in a systemized form, so you can lead a person from having a phobia to the other side where it doesn't have that emotional charge anymore, where like they can have that experience and not feel like panic. So they studied people that had issues and got over them, whereas like mainstream was focusing on how to have problems. And that
Mhm.
like blew me away. uh Kind of like fast forward a little bit more, then I got to a chapter on hypnosis and I was like, wait, what? Because at the time I thought like hypnosis was a gimmick. I thought it was like, like Jedi mind tricks, like you have to be weak-willed for it to work. So like that was like
Mhm.
it was kind of this like conflict. I was like, man, every single thing up to this point made so much sense. Even their approach on how to like solve issues. And now they're telling me about hypnosis. Like what? So but because of that, like I was very open-minded. I was like, all right, I'm jumping in. And that's what kind of opened the door, kind of going back to the placebo. So as I studied like what would you call them? Like cognitive biases, logical fallacies, things like that. What
Mhm.
we take for granted is the confirmation bias, really. And a lot, we're wired to believe whatever we believe is ultimate truth. And like,
Yes.
so what a lot of people don't get, like atheists or people that are like trust the science kind of thing, is what they don't realize is everything is faith, everything is belief. What you're choosing, and this kind of goes back to like I was saying, if I'm taking supplements and I'm like pulling an Eeyore, like, oh,
Yeah.
this doesn't do anything for me. That's a belief. I might like have evidence, confirmation bias that lets me know that I'm right,
Mm.
but it's still beliefs. So that has been like a huge turning point in my life. Like, what are you gonna choose to believe? And I mean, I admit there's like a fine line between like delusion, right? Like wanting to believe something so much, or that conflict, like you say you believe it, but inside you don't feel it, right? So there's this idea of congruence, like feeling that belief instead of just saying it, you know? And I think that's like the biggest thing to aim for. And it's an iterative process. Like we're not going to be like, you got to shed those, I guess, like you have to shed it and become more nuanced and more uh what's the word, balanced over time. Like, and I guess that's how it works. Like I mean in my life I've picked an extreme and then peeled back from it, kind of going back to the conversations at
Every
parties. Like
time. Yeah.
I just went hard on this, because that's all I had. It was like this like one sentence or this paragraph or whatever, and then it grew a little bit and then it grew a little bit and then I became more nuanced and more balanced and then it led to something better. But it's kind of foolish to think that you'll ever hit omniscience. But
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? But like also that's part of the journey. Like you don't have to be, it's not about being right. I think it's about being in the moment. The moment, that's what the whole journey is about. Like if I just fast forward to like my ideal self, where's the fun in that? It's that like unfolding, that process of discovery, just like a tree growing, right? That's what is fulfilling, is being like, man, I used to be like this. And like looking back kind of like this, like, oh man, like, yeah, and I had this moment and this experience
Mhm.
and this person helped that person's life. And like, if I was here, this is one thing I was kind of thinking about recently as far as like social media is I've kept a lot of this stuff private. And um something came on my radar about like if you're creating a product, it's like Legos. You start at the very beginning and then you map every single piece that you're placing to where you get to the finished project. And with all this stuff, I'm like, it's like you're saying about that bridge. Like I'm finding it kind of difficult to build that bridge because I'm here now.
Yeah.
And there's like so many planks I have to lay down to help people that aren't even aware of health Twitter yet to get to
Yeah.
here. So I'm trying to kind of focus on closer milestones. Like, all right, if we can just shift them here, if we can build them this bridge, maybe one day it'll end up over here. Because that's, I guess, and that kind of goes back to what you're saying, like kind of even the beginning of the topics, as far as like you're saying, seeing people on health Twitter lets you know that this is a possibility. Like this kind of comes back to modeling, like with NLP, like mainstream thought at the time was you can't, it still is, that you can't get rid of phobias. Like psychology teaches phobias are just a thing, can't get rid of them, all you can do is like medicate, mediate, whatever. So when you look to find a person that overcame a phobia, now you've got that potential, like, oh wait, here's one person I can model, one person I
Yeah.
can kind of learn from to see how to do that thing. And now when you're a person that's done that, other people can come to you now and be like, "Oh, this is possible. Oh shit!" And then it's this like kind of ripple effect, right? Um, and I think that's what's really important is, like you're saying, going against the grain, being that beacon, being that light, being. It's about, so it's like it's showing instead of telling. Like it's like,
Right.
instead of do as I say, not as I do. It's like, no, be integrated, do as I do. This is possible, you know. And I think that's why it's so important to like walk the talk and actually use what you're using instead of just talking about it. And I think that's why our experience is really important. Like especially again coming back to suicide, just like having gone through it, coming out on the other side and be like, hey, you can come out the other side too.
Yeah.
Like it's a possibility. It's more than a possibility. It's a science. Like there's all the things you can stack in your favor so you will get out of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the definition of a role model. People keep saying
Yeah.
a mentor and all that. You're a role model, and to me, it never clicks. But now I think you finally made it click for me because
Mm.
I don't like to see myself in that way. Because in my mind, I have so much to fix. I have so much work to do. But like you're saying, I take this one piece from health Twitter, and to the people who will never be on health Twitter, I will be able to help them. So that's a model. They could look at me and they could say, "Look at this guy. He's doing this." And this is now you bring it into everyday life, and that's the journey. That's what's fun about it. I go out, I go to the coffee shop, someone, I went to the coffee shop, there was a schizophrenic lady there just talking to me. And she said, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm about to go read my book." She said, "All right, let's go." I was like, "Wait a minute. I can't read my book if we're talking." Um, but it's you go out, you find these type of people, you find someone that you are interested you're interested in learning. You can learn from everyone. I go out, I find someone that's interested now. I do this because there's people out there that will judge. Oh, she's weird, she's whatever. I can't deal with this conversation. It's all over the place. I could bridge that. It's I could bridge another gap. I did it. I don't have those fears. Maybe some I don't know. Once I don't have the fears, I can go out and help other people not have the fears. The hardest part with that though is when someone asks me, I've gotten over the fear of death. I I moved back into my parents and I would spend so much time with my parents. I wouldn't be progressing anything, not the podcast, not my life. I'd be going to the gym and I'd be spending time with my parents. And I came to the conclusion it was because I had this just huge fear of death. I Whether I was going to die, whether they were going to die, I just didn't want to miss time with them because I would look so far into the future that I'm spending time with my parents now so that when they die I'll be able to say, I did all this with them. And my solution was this is where people steer off your path. They may not listen. It may not resonate with them. My solution was faith. I pray every night. Look, God, great day today. I thank you for the day. I I pray that I have one tomorrow, but if I don't, I look forward to meeting you and my grandmother. And that dude, overnight, my fear of death gone. And I couldn't believe it. But then if I bring this solution to somebody else, they have to hit the bottom of that fear of death. It's not just they're living with it. They have to finally realize, okay, this is hindering my whole life. And they have to be willing to jump into the water for like dive into the water. We're not dipping our toes in. We're diving into the water. And the solution may not be what they want to hear. That's where that's where I've been lacking. I've been doing these things, I've been trying to find solutions. My dad is he's type 2 diabetic, and I've been finding solutions for that for a while. I cannot show him because I'm not type 2 diabetic. So he can't look at me and be like, "Oh, Trevor got over it." He doesn't have anyone to look at. There's no model because you go to doctors over and over again. They're just going to tell you take this, take this, take this.
Yeah.
Dude, in like 3 months now, he's on the verge of not being diabetic anymore. He's on the
Yeah.
verge of getting over it. And I didn't have to do it. I research it. I come to him. Here's some solutions. But he couldn't dive into the water because I didn't do that. There was no model. So for the ability for someone to dive into the water with you, you have to have dove in first, I guess. I don't know. I'm just trying to piece this together now
Sure,
because I'm
sure.
to be able to help more people, we need more people who've been through it to speak up. Like you're saying, suicide.
Yeah.
I went through the suicidal ideation. I held a gun to my head. I made it through. Someone
Yeah.
when I bring up that conversation, someone who's been through it, there's no bad time to bring up that conversation. And my mom, when I moved here, she would say, "Trevor, are you sure you want to do this podcast? You sure you want to keep revisiting this? Every time you visit this, don't emotion spike or something." And the emotion started to slowly shift. It would at the beginning, it was like, "Man, I can't believe I was suicidal. Man, I can't believe I got cheated on. Man, I can't believe I'm divorced. Never thought I'd be divorced. My parents aren't even divorced, and I'm divorced. I can't believe this." And then when I started talking about it more and started sharing it, is when it slowly my emotions started shifting to, hey, I'm realizing I'm the guy that went through the suicide. There's somebody out there going through the suicide, through the divorce, through whatever it is. And they can look at me as the guy to you could take a little piece of knowledge, whatever it is, this little piece, whatever 10 words I just said in the past 30 minutes, they could have taken and changed their life. And to me, that is what this is all about. And it's you
100%.
have to dive in. This is the hardest part for someone trying to better their life. It's you don't want to leave their life behind. You don't want to go against the grain, but the easiest way, the army says the only way out is through.
Yeah.
Just dive through it, man.
Yeah.
I kind of went on a tangent there myself.
Yeah. No, no. No, for sure. And like that brings up a really good point. Like that's yeah, like case study. I guess well so where I guess my
Mm,
mind went was like going back to like those conversations I had at parties. So by just interacting with people and knowing people and hearing their stories, at some point their stories become yours. And not in the sense that like you went through it, but like if there's a person that's struggling with something that another person, a friend of mine has, I could be like, hey, like, have you heard about Jane? Like my friend Jane,
mhm.
this happened, and these are the steps she took. And then so you're kind of bringing that model there for them. So although you haven't gone through it, you're sharing someone else's stories when they're not there so that they can still benefit from them, you know?
Yeah.
Because with my ex, like I also didn't have diabetes, and I kind of just kind of like you were saying with your dad, like did the research and kind of showed her like, hey, like here's this and this. This is a person that was successful. Here's what works. Like it might not have worked for me specifically, so I can't tell you. But here's stories that have worked for other people. You know, like what do you got to lose except diabetes? Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
uh, but and and this kind of brings it, I guess, full circle. And again, in the sense of on Twitter, I know there's a lot of people that were like, don't hire anyone that hasn't done what you want to do. And I was like, to a level, I can agree with that. But when it comes to like hypnosis and like what I've helped people do, um, like I helped an elderly lady get over bedwetting, right? Like so like what's more important, like the fact that I've helped a person achieve this thing? Like do I have to have gone through bedwetting to be like, hey, I went to another person and they helped me out through
Yeah.
bedwetting? Or could I
Right.
just be that person? Like I helped a lady a long time ago. I was really fascinated with like what's called analgesia. So anesthesia is when like you can't feel anything, but analgesia is when like you'll know that I'm like touching it. Like say I pinch your hand, you'll know that I'm like touching it, but you won't feel the pain. And she was going in for carpal
Mm.
tunnel surgery, and I did a quick like 15-minute session. Um, when she went into surgery, like this half of her body spontaneously went into analgesia, went numb. And like she didn't even know it happened. The only reason she knew is because she was there, she had her eyes closed, and the doctor was putting the anesthesia into her hand, and she didn't feel any of it. At the end he because she had her eyes closed, he like shook her and was like, "Hey, do you see this?" And he was just finishing up like the fourth shot, and she like opened her eyes, she's like, "Look at this." And like basically the right half of her body was like holding on to like the chair and like shaking, like just this half, and like the other this half was just like slumped, like completely relaxed. And like it blew me away because this was very early in my career, and I had an idea of how it was gonna go. And like when she told me how it went, I was like, what? Like, and that it just got me so much more fascinated because like our unconsciouses, our body, our inner intelligence, they're going to interpret whatever's coming up the conversation in the way that makes sense to them. So for her system, it made sense that like half her body held all the stress while the other half relaxed and went along with the operation. Like so instead of just like completely and thoroughly letting go of the stress, she was in a space where like she felt safer holding on to it, but only with half of her body holding onto it. And I was like, that's wild. Like you can't
Yeah.
make that up. You know what I mean? Like what? So that
No.
still blows me away. But I never went through carpal tunnel surgery. And then the coolest part is she had her right wrist done before. She took a month off work because she was data entry, and it took her 6 weeks to heal. But with this surgery, with the left hand, the one that I worked with her for, she healed in 2 weeks. So she got to use that last 2 weeks that she took off for vacation. Like she went and like actually did stuff, and I was like, damn, that's cool. Like, like you healed 150% faster than last time just with one 15-minute session. Like so. I agree, and I think this is where it's important to tease apart distinctions, like you mentioned before, like mentors. There's mentors, and I believe they're like role models, people that teach you how to live. Like so if they like the way that your life has gone, you can kind of mentor them that way, like show them what it's like to live that way. Then there's consultants. They teach you how to do things. Like, hey, you want to get good at marketing, we'll do that for you. We'll do your funnel campaign. We can teach you how to do it. We either do the campaign for you,
Mhm.
or we'll teach you a step by step systematic way to do it for you. And what's been lost in translation is coach, or in this case, hypnotist. It's like you were saying before about Jordan Peterson. It's not the coach's role is to hold that space for the person to come to their solutions, like guiding questions, right? Just like asking questions, so something like this where it all comes out, and then they can sit back and be like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. It's
Mhm.
not about right or wrong. It's not about teaching a person to do the thing. You're helping them tap into their own inner intelligence and come up with their solutions. So knowing that they're going to be unique to that person, there's no way I'm going to have had that journey, right? But having that experience, knowing that I've made out of it, can give them the conviction they need to move forward to take that
Mhm.
journey. If that makes sense. So I think it's important to kind of like tease this stuff apart. And I, you know, everything like it reminds me of something Tony Robbins said. It's I basically like you can find a saying that means either thing, um, in the sense that like a saying that portrays like either extreme. Um, I can't really think of any off the top of my head, which is kind of sad. But like, kind of like the early bird gets the worm. Like, it's like it's important to get up early and like take initiative. But then there's gonna be another one like the tortoise and the hare, right? Like to kind of
Mhm.
go slow down instead of just speed yourself up. Like that's when you'll actually win the race. So there's always a saying that like will paint either side, and I think it's always about the balance and what the moment needs, right? Like kind of going back to before with like the white wolf and the black wolf, right? Like when do we need more white wolf energy? When do we need more black wolf energy? What is the moment need, right? It's never about either or. It's about that like balance and integration. Cool.
Yeah, man. I gotta say that even you using the word balance, is helping me out a lot. Very, very focused on the future. That's what I mean, I got vision boards, everything like that up.
Nice.
So I'm focused and I know what I need to do to get there.
Yeah.
So it's been beelining it. I know what to do it. And then when I don't do it, it's what's wrong with me? I doubt not doubt myself, but I'm upset with myself because I could do it, but I decide not to or whatever it is. And it's not necessarily putting it off. There's some times where I put it off. I know the difference between putting it off, but it's times like Sundays I don't do anything. I go to church. Yesterday I had a great day. I got tattooed a cross on my leg. Good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um and just enjoying myself. And then that time I was just in the Twitter space enjoying myself. It's nice to hear because even the turtle in the hair, at some point I will take off in the business I'm in, and at some point, my life is going to be great. But enjoying the journey and doing it slow for someone who already has trouble um enjoying the present, that's helping me a lot just to realize. And it's honestly, it's every one of these podcasts I sit down and I get to talk and just let it out and relax. And it was hard. The first episode I did alone was 2 episodes ago, and it was challenging. Um, I was trying to think of things to say next. I was trying to think of what am I gonna say, now, whatever it is. Even right now when I'm talking, what am I gonna say? And switching over to faith and at church yesterday, we were talking about, don't Lord, don't give me the words. The Holy Spirit, don't give me the words. These are the Holy Spirit's words. So I've stopped kind of thinking that I'm trying to say the right words. I'm trying to say the right thing. It's always the right thing. If I'm saying what's on my mind. Once I start thinking about it, I'm not following what I'm true to, which is God, you know? So the second I think about it and I'm trying to steer a conversation or whatever it is, I'm taking away the power of God and the power of the conversation. So this is the first podcast that I've done where I've just let it go. And man, has
Nice.
it been way better than just within myself. It's been way better just to be here talking about it instead of, even thinking while you're talking. If I'm thinking about the next 5 minutes or whatever it is, I I'm not thinking about what you're talking as much. And Jordan Peterson posts up, you know, that's what psychopaths do. And I went to his conference last week and that's what he said. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, not that I'm a psychopath, but psychopaths are trying to use their words to their advantage at every step of the way. They're trying to listen
Hmm.
to somebody else and twist their words to get what they want out of the conversation.
Hmm.
And I was thinking, like, man, I've been up until episode 66, I've been a psychopath trying to steer this, like trying to steer this whole thing the right way. But it's like you keep saying balance, big thing you've been preaching. You keep saying present, big thing you've been preaching. And then the third thing that you've said consistently is learning. All this stuff, you're intelligent, man. You keep bringing things up. I got my notebook down, I'm writing stuff down. You're intelligent. So
Thank you.
anybody watching this, that's what I would see. Anybody watching is getting balance. They're getting um intelligence, and they're getting present moment. So I, I didn't expect to, but I just recapped it for you, like
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
just real quick for you. Yeah.
For
But
sure.
you just real quick. I mean, we're kind of running. If you got some time, I
Yeah, I
got
got
some
time.
time. So we're gonna shift a little bit and go into just addiction in general. There's a
Sure.
lot of people we've had multiple people on the show talk about addiction, and it could be anything. That's where it kind of gets tough. People, I put addiction in the title, and it may be somebody who's just addicted to going to the gym.
Sure.
Just working with the addiction, because I think that plays a big role into balance, especially when you're weaning off of something. When I was weaning off of weed, I'm trying to balance when to do it, when not to do it, that type of stuff. So when you were addicted, what age were you addicted to whatever the substance was? And then at what age did you realize it's about time to crush this? And then how to crush it? I mean, those are loaded, but we can go one by one.
Yeah. Hoof. No, yeah, it's so interesting. Like, that's so interesting. I wanted to touch upon this a while ago, and unconsciously I didn't. So thank you for bringing this up. Because it kind of goes back into the whole like mainstream thing. I basically it was socially acceptable to drink. I was very straight edge up
Mhm.
until about 15, and my like nihilism and depression got the best of me. I was like, what, why, who cares?
Mhm.
So I just kind of gave in. I mean, it didn't help that like my friends that were like also like we had our circle, we were straight edge, and then one of my friends started drinking, another friend started drinking, we made a friend that drinks, and then I was like, I had like a low point, so I was like, what the fuck's the point? I will also start drinking. So it started
Yeah.
with that. um Maybe I was like a really bad drunk. Like I've always prided myself on doing the most and being the best the fastest. So like I don't know, like the first time I got drunk, I drank like 10 Ice House, and I was like, and it was all about holding the liquor. So I was like, yeah, man, I've had 10 Ice House.
Yeah.
I like was doing the math of like how much alcohol was in my system. I was an interesting kid. Uh, but like, so what happened was, and then I had like that punk rock chip on my shoulder kind of thing too, right? Like, um, then later it became pot, like same kind of thing. Like my friend started smoking pot, and I was like, "Man, you guys are idiots. Why are you doing that?" And then like one day I like gave in, smoked pot. Then like my good friends, like the ones I trusted the most, they were talking about how they smoked like a primo blunt with their cousin, and so then I like opened the door. Like I trust these kids. They smoked a primo blunt. What do they know that I don't know? And I kind of started treating drugs as like, well, okay. So when I smoked pot, I was like, this is so much better than fucking beer or like alcohol. Like,
Yeah.
why does it get so much hate? So that's what kind of like fucked me up is being suspicious, anti-mainstream or whatever, right? I was like, there's got to be something to drugs because they're trying to repress them so bad. Marijuana was so great; it helped me focus. I feel like I'm like getting stuff done that I hadn't before. Like like as far as like homework and writing and stuff, like I just like just dialed me in. So I was like, what about these other things? So like when
Mhm.
Primo came on my radar, I was like, sure, let's try that. And then like one of the kids in the group was like, hey, have you ever just smoked like coke by itself? And I was like, no, man. And he's like, oh man, we should really do it sometime. I was like, sure. Like,
Yeah.
and so like because I didn't like when we smoked the primo blunt, it didn't really do anything. I was like, huh, I think this is just kind of like not like an old wives' tale, but I don't know. I didn't really
Mhm.
experience anything. Maybe it wasn't because there wasn't enough or like whatever. So then I was thinking like, yeah, we should totally smoke it by itself. So like one day he came over and we smoked and he like taught me like the whole ritual. And then like it was just like a huge lesson in naivete, like and not knowing what the fuck I was doing, right? Like I didn't know that was crack. And like once I smoked it, I was like, fuck, because it was like it's I wouldn't okay, it's hard. I don't want to condone drugs, but like it was pretty. I would say it's it got me. It really got me. It was like kind of my style. It was like the thing I was looking for. And then like the door kind of just opened. Like a friend of mine told me about arrowwood.com, and it's just got like all these. It's got like anything that has like a psychoactive element, and it kind of tells you about the experience, what you can expect from different dosages. So then I was just trying everything, like I don't know, tripping on cough medicine, like meth, heroin, opioids, anything we could find. Anyway, we had a friend that was like worked as a pharmacy tech, and she just had like a container of all the different things. So tried like everything, but like for me crack was like the thing that got me. I could not shake it. Everything else it was like all right to dabble in. I didn't really The other things didn't really do much for me. um and it got to a point, like I mean I still say, like I wouldn't wish crack addiction against my worst enemy. Like it is terrible. It is fucking terrible.
Wow.
um so drinking was 15, pot 17, crack 18. That was till about 24 till I was actually done with it. It was like really strong for a while, and then it was kind of like this like flip flopping, like quit for a bit, come back, quit for a bit, come back. Um, when I was like around 21, 22, I kind of felt like the separation. Like I felt like I was observing myself. And I remember just like, dude, I'm becoming a crackhead. I was getting weird, like saying weird shit, just making weird sounds, no filter, just like thoughts were coming straight
Mhm.
out of my mouth, sharing things that I didn't want to share with people, like personal like things. And I was like, man, and I was just I mean, like you said, I did pride myself on being intelligent. So like kind of seen having a reference for what I was like senior year when I was like top notch, like I actually applied myself for the first time. had like a 4.2 GPA, all that kind of stuff. And then just like tanking to this level, it was just like really, I guess, humbling in a sense, but also like it was a mix of emotions. I felt very shameful that I have stifled my spirit this much to where this is like the
Yeah.
husk gets in, like fuck, and then like then there was this fear, is this reversible? Like I believed it was reversible, but I was like, I mean, like, how much of this is permanent? Like, how much, because like this was back still like around the time we thought like brain cells, like when you hit your head, you don't get brain cells back, right? But we now know about neurogenesis. So it was like this. I guess that was the hardest part about growing up is like there's so much uncertainty around this stuff, and a lot of what was being peddled, there was no actual truth. It was just said enough with enough repetition that we believed it.
Okay.
So like I didn't want to go to like kind of going back to it with my mom and stuff growing up when I was tinkering with shit. I couldn't ask her because in my head she didn't know better. Like she didn't know. Like adults in my head, I didn't believe that they knew because they were all part of the mainstream. Like they were just
Yep.
drinking the Kool Aid. So who do you trust? Like you kind of just have to figure out on your own or like talk to people that have done this. So it was just a really, really dark time in my life because that's when I like was really thinking of like suicide because I was feeling very stuck. Didn't think I'd ever get out of it. I thought it was kind of permanent, and like I was having so much regret about getting to this low point. Um, and luckily, yeah, I guess, and that was the hardest part is I had no support. Like the only thing that kept me going, the thing that got me out too is like there's I would say so like 17. I around 14 I started skateboarding. It was me and my best friend. Then we made some friends, and then they made some friends, and then like we started just getting like all these different cliques from different high schools. And at some point we were skating at like this school, and there was literally like 62 of us. Like cops
Wow.
had to come and like make us leave in groups of four, and like we weren't doing anything. We were just skating and stuff. But like inevitably, like corruption's gonna come in, right? There's gonna be people with drugs and like shady fucks coming in and stuff. So where was I going with that? With the what? So basically, like a decent amount of our friends, either there was an addict that came in, or one of my good friends got swayed and became an addict. So I just saw like a lot, like a pocket of us starting to decline, and I I will say it was this twofold. Like I was terrified to go to rehab because I didn't know what to expect or how that was going to affect me in the future. But I also did not trust it at all, and I didn't want to do what everyone else was doing. And so a lot of like everyone that was struggling with addiction went into rehab. And I noticed it was this kind of like revolving door kind of thing. Like they'd go and they'd say they were clean, but then they'd meet someone and then they'd start hanging out with like addicts. And then all it took was just one person being like, hey, let's just go get a thing. And then now
Mm-hmm.
the whole group kind of like digresses or devolves again and gets back into addiction. And so I was like, man, like rehab does not seem to be working. So I just took it as a stance. Like I was just very against rehab. I wasn't going to do rehab. I was going to do things different. And I do believe that's why like I wound up quitting is everyone. I would say out of I don't know, like 40% of the people that like went into addiction. So everyone went into rehab. 40% of them killed themselves. And the last time I checked, the other 60% were still using before I like kind of broke communication just because I couldn't be around it. I'm under the impression that of the few of them that have been in my periphery, they're still using. I know one person kept reaching out here and there and wanted help, and I didn't know how to help. I hung out with them and stuff, offered some support, but like it would be a one off. Like they hang out with me and then disappear again, and I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know. So um, the biggest the catalyst was kind of that split where I was feeling terrible about what I had done and like not letting my spirit grow through me and like creating the state for it. Um the thing that helped me punch through was I was like clean for 3 weeks, and it was the day my dad passed away, like the anniversary of it. And I was just kind of taking a day to myself, like just I'm just gonna like kind of go visit his gravesite, just take it easy. It was like a really depressive like October day, really gray out and stuff. And then my cat wound up like getting really sick and was like on the verge of passing away. So I was just like just giving myself that space. And the phone rang and I like picked it up, and it was just, like my dealer. And he was like, "Hey, yo, like I haven't heard from you in a while. You good?" and then he was trying to give me some for free, and I like instantly just got so fucking pissed. I was like, you, in my head, I didn't say it. I was like, you fucking piece of shit. You think you could just call up and offer me this stuff and I'm just gonna
Yeah.
come back to you like a fucking slave or something? Like, like the audacity you have to call on this day specifically. Like, I had just so much fire energy and that experience. Like, I think this is kind of goes back to what we're talking about, like about faith and serendipity. Like, what were the chances he didn't call the day before or the day after?
Yeah.
Why did he call in that moment? And like,
Yep.
it just got me so riled that like I had so much energy to finally just kind of like be done. That's, I wish I could say it was more about willpower and this and that and strategies, but it was just kind of like, well, I guess in the back of my head there was the desire to looking for ways out, and then it clicking in that moment, Um, but like to the best of my knowledge, I'm the only person out of that group that got out of addiction, and I did it without rehab. Um,
Wow.
yeah,
Talk about an outcast, huh?
yeah.
No, the priding yourself in intelligence, I ran into that with the weed addiction. It
Mm,
it was I was getting angry with myself for smoking because I'm the same way. I pride myself on the intelligence I have, and I've always been told all growing up I'm smart. And when I would forget something
mm.
because I'm high or whatever it is, it would upset me. When I would go to school high and come back and only know one thing instead of knowing 5 things, that would upset me, and I knew I just felt the hindrance of, this yes, this is great. I need it for my emotional support, but now it's hindering my own like, it's hindering my emotions because I'm getting angry at it. I'm getting angry at myself because I know, I pride myself on intelligence. So I guess what I would say to people struggling with it is find something to pride yourself in. When you finally feel that, whatever it is, you pride yourself on skateboarding, and now you're not as good of a skateboarder. Whatever it is, you were always good at something, and then this happens with every drug. You're always good with something, even the SSRIs, anything. Always good at something, and then it's taking a little bit of that away from you. It's taking away from your soul, your what you want to be, which who you are. That's that's what flips it. It's at least starts to flip when you have because that it's using the self belief kind of in a different direction. You're not just trying to believe in yourself to be good at, make money or have a family. You're using the self-belief to take yourself out of the worst situation you've been in. And you said you didn't have much of a support system. How did you do it without a support system? Because me, dude, I don't know why I called 9 people with the gun to my head. The last call, I didn't want to call my little brother. I didn't ever want to put this on him because I knew he was struggling with it. Now I'm getting emotional, but my mom called me a couple times saying, "Trev, I'm worried about him." And I called 8 people. I had, 5 friends up there. I called family and I didn't want to call my mom. And so I called my little brother. And if he didn't answer, I don't know where I'd be. I don't know if I don't know if I would have made it out. How did you bridge that gap? How did you do it with no support system? Was it just obnoxiously, like you said, that delusional? Were you delusionally believing in yourself and believing in the ability to get over it?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah. Okay. That's a rough one. Okay. Oh, fuck. Okay.
You're good. Take your time, man. I love seeing gears turn. That's
Um,
another thing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Ooh. Okay. 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 uh, yeah, that's so fucking crazy. So my mind went a couple different places. I mean, the first thing is one of my beliefs or takeaways based on my experience is that I always had to be the bigger man. Um, and there was a time when we first moved into the new place, and my brother was doing his things. This was like the first time I experienced what it was gonna be like, right? He was I was in my room, and he just like was like, I don't know, like punching my mom's door or slamming or whatever, but he like there's like he broke through like the wood panel. So now there's this big hole and you can like see in her room. And I was like terrified. I was like 9, and I thought he was gonna harm her. So what's really fucked up is I went to the phone to call 911, not to protect myself, but to protect my mom. And then she came out of her room and like she knew what I was doing, and she took the phone out of my hands and hung it up. And then 911 called back, and she said it was a wrong number. And that was like, I don't know. I mean, it was pretty traumatic because I didn't realize it at the time, but I was like 9, trying to be the adult, protect my mom and me, and not even
Mhm.
myself. Like, I was like just wanting to protect her, and she didn't have the, I don't know, the wherewithal to protect me, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
then that was the thing is like, eh, I don't want to go into details, but like that was kind of like the theme always, like with my brother and her, is like for some reason it was always my fault, and since a very young age I had to be the bigger man. I had to like kind of figure out. I don't know. My mom put a lot of emotional pressure on me to like figure stuff out. Like, so my dad was really intelligent. He was very supportive. I believe that she leaned on him greatly, and that he would kind of like direct the family. And when that was gone, she needed to go turn to someone, and that was me because I was his son.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of a lot of fucking pressure to put on a kid. I'm in essence, I'm blessed because that, I guess I always put myself on the back burner. The whole thing that got me through was so I could be there for others, so I could be the model, so people knew how to get out of this. Like, it was never about me. It was just like, I just got to do this. I have to figure this out. I have to get through this for other people, not for myself. Um, so that's where my mind went when you asked. Uh, like, I was my own support system, and I guess it kind of comes back to like Jesus and God. Like, I felt very connected. Also, though, I had the myth of my dad. Like, I felt like my dad was watching over me, so I had kind of that whole thing, like a guardian angel. There's many times I should have died and I haven't. There's always been something that like kind of like, I don't know, like Final Destination in reverse. Like, it was gonna be a Final Destination moment, but then something happened,
Oh,
and I
you
was
got a
like,
spam call.
you know,
Yeah.
so that's what got me through, is something bigger than myself, and it wasn't about me. It was like for other people. Yeah. Whew.
Yeah, man. I've ran into that a bit as well. It's never been too much about me. I've always been I guess mine would be almost in reverse. I going in and out of my work at the army shop, I was the guy that brought the smile in. Everyone knew, and Nelson, one of my good buddies, still talk to him to this day. He asked me one time, he said, "Dude, I just don't understand how you do it." And I was 22. He had to be 27, 28. He's like, "Dad, just don't know how you do it. You come in here every day with this energy and it lights up the whole room. And I wish I had something like that. I'm glad you're here because you're doing that. I just don't understand how you do it." And that was my role most of my life. Not like the class clown, but the one laughing, smiling, and even throughout basic training, I did countless amount of push-ups because I was smiling. I didn't eat one time. I missed all of the lunch. I had to eat bread because I was kicked out of the line for smiling and had to do push-ups put at the end of the line. Um, and that was for me, but it was also for everyone else. It was bringing that light to the room. And when all of this, I went overseas, I ended up getting divorced, and then I was getting medically discharged. I was planning on doing 20 years in the army. And after 3.5 years, 4 years, they found I had scoliosis. So they were medically discharging me. So that shattered everything. I just got a house. I was freshly divorced, so it was a new chapter already, and now it's like a double new chapter.
Yeah.
And I wasn't able to bring that light anymore, so I had to turn the other way. I had to quit worrying about everybody else so much
Mm.
and start turning towards me because I've gotten to this position because I was worrying about everyone so much. And once I did that, that's when I needed other people. I needed the other support system because I'm only supporting myself, and doing it alone is the worst option you could choose.
Yeah.
But once I turned that leaf and I started looking inward, that's when I started leaning on other people for, opinions and everything, and trying to figure out who I am, what I'm going to be. And that's
Yeah.
why I ended up calling my brother. I just had to lean on someone else finally. And I didn't realize that till very late. But now it's gone full circle. Now I'm back to being that light. I just went through the, dark time.
Yeah.
So yeah, a big thing in my mind was always family. Not necessarily even my family that's here with me. Of course, I want to be here for that family. Um, but I always saw like they'd be fine without me. Um, as sad as that sounds, they would find a way to get through it. And mine was my future family. If I passed, I killed myself, whatever it was, went down this dark path. Not that I had a bad childhood, but either A, I would give that kid a bad childhood, or B, there wouldn't be a childhood for him. I wouldn't be able to give a kid to this world that's done a lot for me, and I love the world, I didn't want to leave it without leaving a mark. Once I go, that's it. I'm gone. My family will hold on to it. Once my family's gone, that's it. I'm gone.
Yeah.
So to me, it was always, yeah, like you said, maybe not the active support system I had. They of course helped me, but it was looking into the future and looking like, hey, I'm here for a bigger reason because, like you said, all these things kept coming in my mind. All these things. I went overseas and came back twice without a scratch,
Yeah.
and to me that was like, whoa, dude, like, why am I still here? And even in Iraq, we were getting bombed. Iraq, we had no defense system, so at any time if we got bombed, we're screwed. Uh, And to me, that was shocking enough to realize, no, I'm here for something, and
Yeah.
so that's when faith started playing a role. Um, But yeah, to close it off, man, I don't like asking this question too much because it is kind of cliche, but to the person struggling, not the person that doesn't know they're struggling, to the person who knows they're in a position where they got to change their life. We covered a lot in this episode in the past 2 hours, but what would you say to that person that may be thinking about holding the gun to their head, but they know it could get better?
I know it is, and the answer is cliche is it's not worth it.
Yeah.
You know, wow, like that's really that's a I know it's a cliche question, but it's hard to answer. I mean, like the biggest thing is it's like it's something you can't undo, you know? Uh and the other thing though is I guess I'm thinking of like strategies. Like the biggest thing is like to kind of it can be hard in the moment because but to kind of do a reflection of those things that like that fill your heart, like those experiences you've had with people, those one-offs. Like I guess, ooh, let go of the need to be what other people want you to be. Let go of the need to fulfill other people's wishes. Kind of like you were saying, kind of like focus on yourself again. Like, um, take a second to notice and look at what makes you happy. Take a moment to go back on those times, no matter how quote unquote trivial they might feel, but those ones where you felt alive. It could have just been like smiling at a person on the street. But
Mhm.
it can be easy to forget about those things. Just maybe take stock, like journal all the things that like have had that impact on you where you just felt connected, felt alive, felt happy, whatever it is, and just keep going. Keep going. Maybe set a timer for like 30 minutes and just keep writing, you know? Because like, the things that are first and foremost are going to come up, but then you're going to go deeper and deeper and be like, "Dang, I forgot about that one time when I was like 6 and that person like
Yeah.
I fell down and that like elderly man just helped me up." You know what I mean? It's like the little things that like can get lost and like when you have a stockpile of that just yeah, I think that's a maybe something yeah. There's a
Yeah,
lot of different things, but
there's a lot of things, yeah. No, that's one thing that did help me a lot, man, is just journaling. Um,
yeah,
you don't have to do it every day. You don't have to, set a timer every day. You just gotta start, you
for
know?
sure.
It's the one way we organize our thoughts. Otherwise, our thoughts are all over the place. It's the one way that's Jordan Peterson talked about it live was we organize our thoughts through writing. And if you're not writing, you're all over the place. Um,
Yeah.
you want use blue pen. Blue pen is good for those listening. Your emotion follows with it. There's studies to show it. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So now, yeah, I'm riddled with blue pens, but yeah, it's tough, man. That's I never my answer will change every time I ask the question because, like you said, there's so many answers. There's
Yeah.
so many things. But to me, to hear that from you, and then for me to say it, just thinking out loud right now, that goes to show anybody struggling right now is there are so many answers.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
find one. That's it. Whatever it may be, whatever. My answer for a little bit was weed. And what I said about weed a little bit ago is it's a mediocre drug. If you want to be mediocre, smoke weed. If you're below mediocre, smoke weed. Get to mediocre. Like to me, I had to do that to get back to mediocre. I was down in the pits of hell, and I smoked a little bit, and I got to mediocre. And then once I hit that, it was like, all right, now I can excel past this. I built the foundation. But there's so many outlets for people to take and so many answers. It's hard to answer. I do like yours though, man.
Yeah, yeah. One other thing that came up too is like on the flip side is like if you had a magic wand and things could be exactly how you'd like that to be, what would that look like? And just kind of like paint that picture, you know? And like give yourself that space to dream again, like to get away from like
Mhm.
the naysayers, what's possible. Like this is just a moment to like connect with your that like creative spirit inside.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Actually that's funny because that's a sales tactic. Like,
Oh,
I don't want to buy your life insurance. I don't want to buy your life insurance. Like, all right, let's just throw in a hypothetical here. If this is exactly how you want it to be, what would it look like?
yeah.
And
Yes.
that's you can use it here too. Yeah, and dreaming itself. The older we get, the further we get away from dreaming. We start getting all these social cues. We get all these inputs, and we disconnect from who we are. So, really taking that time, meditation is key. It helped me through a lot. If you want to bring a notebook to it, bring a notebook to it. But to me, I did it this morning. Kind of felt bad about it, but instead of waking up at 7, I slept in until 8, but it wasn't really a sleeping. I laid there like half awake, half not, just thinking about everything. If I fell asleep a little bit, that's fine. I woke up in 15 minutes. And it was weird this stage I was in. I was waking up every 15 minutes this morning from 7 to 8. I was meditating and waking up, meditating, waking up, meditating, waking up. And it was just interesting. You got to give yourself time to dream.
Oh, for
And
sure.
that's just, yeah, that's so key, man. I'm glad you said that. But yeah, man,
Thank you.
anything else before we hop off here?
Uh, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, like, I guess the one thing is if anyone's struggling, I'd like to include my Calendly link so people can just sign up and I can offer support and then share slash guide whomever through things like this. You know, like what would that look like? Like just create that support and use these strategies like you're saying there's a lot of them. Just find out which ones are needed for the moment to help you get into like open the next chapter in your life. I know right now it might feel like it's time to close the chapter completely, but say we were to open that chapter to that next installment, what would that look like when you overcome what you're going through currently? You know?
Yeah. Yeah,
For
I'll
sure.
throw it in the description. I'll throw it in there for sure. Um,
Cool.
I wouldn't expect a huge blow up, but
Yeah,
one
no,
person,
no.
that's what I shoot
It's
for every time, dude. One person.
yeah,
We
like
got
and
eight
then that's the
eight
thing is
people
it's
watching.
just it's another door a person can take whenever they need it, you know? Like
Mhm.
I didn't get in this for the money. Like it'll be free. It's just
Yeah.
like if I'm not using it, it's not like what was the point, but I want to be using it. I want to bring this to
Yeah.
life, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not yeah, it is for me people it is selfish in a weird way. I'm selfish towards helping other people. It feels so good for me to help another person, you know?
Yeah.
And it's say what you will, but that's a good way to use selfishness, in my
Oh, sure.
opinion.
Yeah, 100%. You can never escape it. So might as well use it in a positive way, right?
Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, Francis, dude, thank you for coming on. This was an incredible episode. Say it every time.
Yeah. Thank
It
you. Thank
just
you for
you
having
just
me.
yeah, yeah, no, man, thanks for reaching out and thanks for that the bio you sent. It'll be in the show notes or something. We'll throw it somewhere on the website.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, I'm glad we opened this relationship because
100%.
it's that's the goal is find as many people that can help as many people. We're helping each other, talking through things, even us, we're coaches, we're mentors, whatever you want to say. We don't get these ideas by, meditating alone. Typically I meditate and when I get an idea, I bring it to somebody.
Right.
So it's awesome to provide that sense of community and everything. And yeah, man, I thank you a lot. We went very deep, covered a lot of
Yes.
things. Um, I mean, I don't know if there's something that we didn't cover that I want to cover, but I'm sure we could keep talking for hours, but
Right.
we'll
No.
send you on your way, man.
Yeah, no, sounds good. I appreciate the extended time having me on here, giving me the space to like it was I guess that's what's kind of cool. Like the one thing is like whenever I'm working with a client, I feel like I grow just as much as they do. And I feel like just as much what I shared today, as helpful as it will be for others, I feel like this was also very helpful for me. So
Mhm.
thank you for giving me the space to kind of like revisit my inclination, my vocation, and the ability to share this with people so that way they can get and benefit from this too.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And show's not made unless the person's open. So you nailed it, man. You were wide open, willing to talk about anything, and I couldn't appreciate that more. So
Awesome.
we will reconnect at some point and see what's going on again. And good luck on your book. You're writing a book, right? I'll leave
Yeah.
that whatever we got for that. I'll leave that in the description. Just shoot that link over to me. And yeah, man, I'm glad we're both on the path to helping people. We got something good going here, man.
100%. Yeah. No, I'm so glad. Yeah, dude. I don't know. It's awesome that I met you. It's so cool. And I'm
Yeah,
so glad that you're doing this just because oh, like, yeah. I don't know. This is really important, and I like that's like very kind of not like grassroots, right? Like not mainstream, like in the trenches. You
yeah,
know what I mean? Building a community around it instead of it just being like entertainment on YouTube or something.
yeah,
You know?
yeah, man. And if you haven't heard it enough, man, as most men don't, I am proud of you to overcome what you have overcome. It's impressive. That's the first thing
Yes,
I thought when I read it all. Very, very proud of you to be here still, man. Incredible. Doing what you do, incredible. It's just good stuff, man. Very good stuff. Very good stuff.
for sure. I'm proud of you as well. I know it's not the easiest to say at times, and we don't hear it much, or I feel like we don't. But dude,
Yeah, no.
I love that you turn it around and you're doing this now.
Yeah. And you the
Yeah,
same, man. But we will talk soon, man. And thank you everybody for tuning in. We had a decent amount of listeners on Twitter. We're gonna keep hopefully moving them numbers up.
yeah.
But we'll catch y'all on the next one.
All right,
Peace
sounds
out.
good. All right, take care.